So we ended last meeting talking about going through the past the way previous iteration of the communication plan, and then the one that Nick so lovely created for us this time around. And just figuring out what's actually still needs to be done and what is done or will quickly soon be done, so that we know what's left to move forward with making our new goals. Did everybody get the copies of them? Okay. Did you have anything in particular, Nick, that you wanted to point out with any of them on the new one?
No, I mean, when you look at all the communication committee members should have received this document, which provided a summary of all of the action steps listed in the 2021 plan. It gives a quick little status update and then some notes just on the general completion or lack thereof, maybe potentially some next steps. So if everybody read through this, I won't take a bunch of time to go through it item by item. I think in a general sense, a lot of great stuff's happened over the past 2 years. We continue to build foundational level infrastructure to proceed in a more efficient way. There were some pretty aggressive timelines in there for certain projects that relied on help from other departments or people, and in some cases either that never really came out, or there were other projects that kind of got in the way of some of those things happening. For example, a lot of the Alma integrations, while it does set a lot of these projects back, it does actually make it easier to ultimately enact them efficiently in the future. Some of these items are going to kind of be a constantly rolling action item. You know, some of these are very defined, like creating a new website. Creating opportunities for learners is always going to be an ever expanding item that's never really going to go away. So it's kind of a mix of the two. You have those two things where it's either here's this very defined project or here's this very like kind of big picture project. And I would say that overall a lot of great work's been done, but obviously still a lot more work needs to be done.
Does anybody have questions or anything about the?
Yeah, I think it's worth kind of just briefly, you know, not reading everything because I think we all have it, but you know, there's not too many items here. So just in talking about like starting at the top, the complete new website, mobile app, I think there's, in my mind, there's two differences there. I think the website is something that's probably pretty well used, right? And if people are familiar with it, I certainly, you know, I don't see anything like lacking there.
I mean, I would say the big thing would just be the continual revamping and making things more efficient. For example, last week, something we did was I worked with payroll to revamp the what was called the Alma, and not the Alma, the ASOP page. ASOP isn't even the company anymore. It's transitioned over to Frontline. Payroll created a bunch of new guides and helpful resources that we uploaded, and that just made information a lot more clear. Changed it from a company name to something else that was a lot more reflective of, you know, what the tasks were on that page. So that's the project from this point, is going to be just to continually revamp, revise. You know, I've talked with Jen about potentially doing some stuff with student services, for example, because that's some things are a little bit more outdated. So
I think the mobile app is a different situation where you know, based on the data, there's like, it may be useful, but I don't know if, you know, we're getting a lot out of it, right? The current user base probably, it didn't look to be that high. So I'd say that, you know, if we were to do something, there's an area for some action there possibly, right? If we want to commit to using the mobile app, you know, it may or may not to be improved, but certainly I think based on what I saw, it's the feedback for when we asked for feedback, people said, yes, they would like this sort of thing. They'd like a mobile app, they'd like instant things, but it doesn't appear that people are using it. So maybe there's an opportunity there to, you know, focus on that and see if we get anything. I don't know, just a thought.
I definitely understand for action items, separating them out, but I also do agree, right now they're completed. We have set those up, which they weren't, like,
Right,
when the original one was there was no mobile app.
right.
So in a sense, the action is completed, so it's, do you need an action to keep things going? Because that's just a standard practice, is to update and remit, you know what I mean? I think the mobile app usage is gonna go along more with, like interacting with people. How do we get people to interact with us? Versus we
Yeah.
need to push the mobile app, because if people aren't using it, at this point, I think if people aren't using it, it's not because they want to, like, it's because they just don't want to, or they don't find it useful at this point. So I mean, with Alma, is it gonna, the mobile app gonna be updated with that as well?
So the mobile update, I mean, the Alma project won't really impact the mobile app. The mobile app, kind of as it exists and how we were able to deliver it, is more of a kind of essentially taking a standard phone setup, and that you have apps or you have little buttons that you can push, and it's more just kind of guiding people to different links. So it's more of just a different experience for people who may want that pared down, like, oh, I want to be able to just access X, Y, and Z. We can continue to look in the back end to see what pages are and are not being accessed by people. We can change those, move those around, update as needed. But from a mobile app perspective, in terms of that mobile app, there's not really much that can really be like built out on it, just because it has a very specific
I
functionality.
thought there was an option that was gonna be added with Alma of push notifications.
So there's multiple different things that it can be expanded upon in other realms. So as a part of School Messenger, not Alma, eventually we'll be able to have more ability to use push notifications through the app for like weather emergencies, school closures, etc. We need a little bit more work done in the back end to make that one feature live, which was one thing that people had talked about, just having that ability. I don't want a phone call, I don't want a whatever, I want a push notification on my phone. There's a lot of different back end projects that could impact that in different ways. Alma, more or less from the communication standpoint, is taking students and families and getting their information gathered in a way that we can more easily communicate.
Okay.
So we have the ability to, for example, pull these lists into School Messenger, which is where we communicate. You know, this is where you receive all your principal level emails right now, your superintendent email, all your all calls, but it's not really being leveraged efficiently. What we are working on building, and what School Messenger is actually working to make more efficient, and they're going to roll something new out in July, is they're revamping that broadcast system on the internal staff side. And we have more ability to efficiently say, I'm an RMS principal, I want to reach out to fourth grade parents and families about something. So I'm going to just type in that information, send it out to that group, because we now have the ability to condense information that small.
Mhm.
And then I want it to be an email, an all call, a text message. I want it to go on the app, so on and so forth. So those options can be chosen. We still have more work to do on the staff side to make that more efficient.
Mhm.
We have to essentially do, obviously Alma does a lot more than being just a simple system of record, but we need a system of a record on the staff side, because all the ones we have right now aren't super compatible with being able to give important information that can be used to communicate. One thing that we're working on as well is that people will be able to go into, I believe, School Messenger and set communication preferences. So in there, you might be able to say, I want to receive an email. I don't want to receive phone calls anymore. I want to receive just phone calls, not emails. I want to receive everything.
And I think all of that is important for communication in general to help with notification fatigue that people get, where you just swipe and ignore things because it has nothing to do with your kid or it's not your preferred way of communicating. So I definitely think that needs to stay on the agenda to make sure that people have the amount of options so they're receiving the notifications in the way they want. I guess really the question is, do we break them down or do we just say this is an ongoing update of those then? If it's and make that a separate thing. The
So-
ways we notify people is a completely separate thing from the website and the mobile app.
I think we have kind of two things going on at the same time right now in terms of what we're talking about. I think one is obviously reviewing things that we've done, having that base level conversation about, okay, maybe we want to go in this direction, that direction. But I think we also need to decide, are we formally updating this plan? You know, are we keeping this as is and just saying, hey, we have projects, we have marching orders for a lot of stuff. The other stuff's kind of an unspoken project. Or are we actually looking at these items, taking off the things that have been completed, updating things that have been maybe revamped a little bit, and then in the event of projects that are completed, are we actually creating new action items to, you know, whether it's just a simple maintenance and improvement, or so on.
I think if it's something that we're gonna publish, having the completed work on there is also important to show the community that, look, this is what we have done in this is what the committee has done. And just maybe adding something at the bottom of those completed work, like normal user maintenance will be updated. Like, I don't know, as usual. As needed.
So like you could almost do it in the status part, complete, but updates will happen as needed. Or
Right.
something to that effect.
Like we have created a new website, we have created the mobile app, we will update as needed. So that it's not starting from square one.
Mhm.
But we know that with technology and with apps and with websites, you're always gonna have to be updating them.
Well, and what we could do is we could always take this document, I could make it more formal. And it could be a report in the next version of the plan to say, here's a status report of the 2021 action items.
Yeah,
And then we can have the next section be new action items so that they're delineated between here's the last items and their status, here are the new items that we've come up with or the things that we've carried over.
yeah, I definitely like that idea.
But if we wanted to quickly go through each of these, the district policy revamp, I say about 50% complete, just to put a number on it. The big project there was to, one, create a back end system in which the policy committee could better track policies so that they knew that certain things may or may not be slipping through the cracks, what are required policies, so on. So there's now a spreadsheet that the committee has access to, and it'll actually I'll highlight different things that need to be updated based on priority. For example, all required policies that are out of date are highlighted red, all recommended policies that are out of date are highlighted yellow. So that just gives them the ability to go through a list, and rather than just say, oh, we're going to update the A's, then the B's, then the C's, and by the time you get all the way through all 300 policies, you have policies in the A section that have been out of date for 5-6 years. So that part's done. Now it's just A, maintaining, and B, the next phase, which is just looking at developing a comprehensive history of changes so that we can put that on each policy, and then creating a manual or physical book that we can continually update, because unfortunately, a lot of state laws are not updated. A lot of state laws refer to having physical paper copies. A lot of laws refer to, if you don't want a physical paper copy, you can have microfiche, which I don't think is very commonly used anymore. So it's just continually taking those steps so that we have a policy system that can be easily tracked, maintained, so on. Because before it was just kind of chaos and hoping that you found the right thing. ELOs. And other opportunities, there's small successes in working with small groups of learners. There's been other attempts that haven't gone so well, and that we've tried to work with certain people who were excited about certain projects, and some of them end up working well, some of them end up not working at all. I think that solidifying some of those ELO and more formal relationships, trying to get clubs and whatnot could be beneficial. Staff system of record. We originally were going to try to alter a system we already had in the business office. It was deemed that that was not a preferred way because the business office has their information organized in a very specific way for their records. A lot of work has been done to identify different programs that could house staff information. Alma does have a lot of teachers and instructional staff in the system, but they don't have, for example, custodians and other folks. So we do need a different system. And we do believe that we found a good system. It's just freeing up some of the people that are very intensely working on Alma so that they can help work on this HR more or less related project. The e-suggestion box is something that's been on there since 2019. It's kind of a small fish item that I haven't really handled. I've researched a couple different ways we could pull it off. In the meantime, it's just been kind of increasing communication, having people know where they need to look, having people know who they need to talk to, putting different people's email addresses out there so that they're accessible. But we will continue to step forward in that manner as well. Implement the internal staff webpage. That's going to have to wait until the staff system of record. Eventually, we can credential in all of our staff into our website. What that allows us to do is have an intranet where we have that like staff section right now, and we only keep the most public of available information. Eventually, we can put more on those tabs for staff members. We can also give staff members that are heads of certain departments and things like that the ability to edit web pages with my supervision. So that way, theoretically, we could have a more updated website. There we go. The staff newsletter, I did meet with the JREA at one point, try to meet with the JRSSA. It's just trying to gauge them to start to see what they want to see in a staff newsletter so that when we develop it, it actually is something that makes sense for them. I do have a couple people internally that are excited about it in terms of being able to provide information. For example, HR would love the opportunity to provide more information about certain initiatives. The communication app and portal is kind of what I was referring to earlier, in that we are talking about trying to create a different app or portal. This one wouldn't be created, but so School Messenger is actually revamping this whole process. They're hoping to go live in July. I actually watched a couple more webinars on this process again today, and it seems pretty exciting. We can enable a lot of things potentially. For example, we could have a communication related app that would allow, similar to Remind, in which a teacher could have a group with the students and the parents in a certain class, and they could use that to reach out about assignments, to reach out about a variety of other things instead of using email. It's just a different type of portal. The goal or the hope with that would be to take, every class has a different way of potentially communicating. And I know that some parents have talked about, well, this class uses this app and this class uses that app and this person uses email and this person wants to set up an Instagram page, and creating one easily trackable, safe app and portal so that we can do this communication and track it as a district to make sure that things are safe and so on and so forth.
I definitely think that is top priority because
Yeah.
especially when you're add sports into the mix and every coach using a different app, having one common thing, common
Yeah,
way to
that's
communicate is
Definitely something I was wondering too, like track uses Sports U. I don't know what other-
soccer uses Team Snap. We've used Remind in the past. It just depends on what the coach prefers usually.
And I have loved Sports U. But I would not like to have 6 different apps. I'm wondering which.
I remember when I had all three playing different sport. There was 3 different apps like
trying
that
to
we were using. trying to
Organize all of
coordinate.
that.
So it is definitely from a parent perspective. I would put that high on the list.
Well, and again, as I said, School Messenger has completely revamped this process, and they're hoping to go live in July. They've added a lot of new options, features, etc. We're keeping in contact with them. We're trying to set up our back end with Alma and the staff system of record so that we can properly communicate through the app, because you do need to feed information in a particular way so that you can actually make those connections. Otherwise, it's a lot of manual labor and work to, set up a classroom, so on and so forth.
Yeah, I definitely think it needs to be easy enough
Yeah.
for like the coaches or teachers or anything to use, but I think having one that is common throughout is also helpful, like from elementary to middle school. It just helps with the changes that you're going through, sending your kid from elementary to middle school to high school.
Mhm.
Having one less thing that's changing is always nice.
Could be teams, clubs,
Right.
all of those things, right? Because even starting in elementary school, right? Student council, instead of
Yeah.
getting an email, it could be an app. Soccer team, those sort of things.
Like I
They
said,
do a great job of communicating, but
It's a
I
great
don't think-
job. It's just all.
I don't imagine that any of those are even endorsed by the school, right? They're just coaches off kind of doing their own thing.
no, I mean,
Right?
unfortunately, that's part of the issue is we don't have a standardized
Yeah.
app or thing that we utilize. It's just kind of, I use what I like to use because it's what I'm familiar with.
Yeah.
That would be the goal behind this, would be this is the district supported thing. I've even had teachers come up and say, can I start an Instagram page for my class so that I can share work
Right.
with parents? And it's well, no, that's not the correct way to do that. It's not going to be as protected. You have to watch for comments and things at that point.
Right.
So creating a safe platform, we can have training resources, et cetera, so that parents understand what they have to do, so that staff members, coaches,
Yeah, and
advisors
if there's
know.
those capabilities within the new system to be I don't know what there is, but everyone on the soccer team has a checkbox and they can automatically be added versus the coach being
Right,
sending an email, saying sign up for this app.
or the
Just-
emails that are like, I'm not on that team anymore. Can you remove me from your email list, please? And it takes, or text chain or whatever.
And so a big part of that will just be making sure that it matches up in the back end to Alma, to whatever the staff system of record is, so that those connections and links can be made.
I would also, just on a side note, whatever one we go with, make sure that there is an opt-out that parents can pull themselves out of if they want, because sometimes it's both parents getting it and the one parent is like, nope, I'm not me, not it. So just something for them to be able to pull themselves out of if they want opt-out.
Well, and another interesting thing that came up in one of the webinars that I watched today, and that in the revamping of this broadcast system for when we send out messages, is one of the things they're trying to do is collect data for us in a more meaningful way. So at the end of every broadcast, we get a report that says, here's the 10,000 numbers that you called, and here's the ones that answered the phone, here's the one that let it go to voicemail, here's the one that it didn't connect to at all, so on and so forth. If we can set up the information correctly, which based on everything I've heard, I haven't had the direct conversation. It sounds like through Alma and these other programs, we are doing it correctly. We would be able to get a report that helps to identify if, okay, this child has 2 guardians and neither of them got any kind of message.
Right.
So we could have that detailed information to say, okay, we're not reaching these 10 families every time that we send a message. So hopefully through that kind of accountability and statistic reporting, we should have the means to hopefully be able to reach out to people and say, hey, we've noticed that, you guys haven't received any of the messages that we've sent to you. Are your numbers up to date? Are the emails up to date? So on and so forth.
It also would help on the other end of them saying, I didn't get a notification, and you're like, well, it says you picked up the phone. Or it says it went to your voicemail. Is this the correct number that we have? Not no, you didn't, but this is what it's telling us. This is what number it's telling us. Where's the disconnect?
Mhm.
Because it could just be like, oh, well, my voicemail box is full. Well, then you either need to pick up or clean out your voicemail.
Well, and that was part of the benefit also of doing some of the updates we did in web school. And it sounds like they might be even more robust in Alma, and then also with using School Messenger, is taking that step to put more power in the parent or guardian's hand to say, I'm going to update my information. Here's my phone number. Here's my email. Because, people log into any number of apps, programs, et cetera, and they don't remember to update every single one every time they have a new phone number. So being able to have that power to log in at least and have that annual verification, hopefully will catch more people from having the issue of, oh yeah, well, I changed my number, halfway through last year. Audit of a communication practices and policies. That's just kind of me wanting to create a system in which we can look at how we're communicating in the schools, throughout the district, internally, externally, to make sure that we're doing things efficiently, to see, okay, is there room for improvement? It's kind of a big ticket item that can be informative to do, but again, it's having the time, the resources, and potentially the help to be able to properly conduct. It was referenced a little bit, but improving communication around athletics. Our athletic website is controlled completely outside of me. It's something that's housed by the NHIAA, and we input basic information in there. I know a lot of people have had problems with that system. I also know that people have said that there's varying levels of communication from different coaches and things like that. So again, just looking at kind of auditing those different systems, trying to set some practices and standards to say, okay, these are the programs you use. Here's the information you need to communicate so that we can make sure that everybody's getting the information they need. Communication trees is mostly just kind of looking at creating a physical document that showcases kind of, here's your issue, here's who you contact. If you can't get a hold of this person, you reach out to this person, just kind of working your way up. I feel like sometimes we have situations in which people will either just randomly cold call somebody hoping that it's the right person, or they will immediately go to the superintendent's office or another higher up person just to say, hey, I have this issue. When in reality, if it's a question about something, you should really be starting with your child's teacher or with the business office secretary, just to kind of create those connections to say, here's who you should be reaching out to.
Can we put on there Facebook is not the proper way to communicate?
I mean, that's unfortunately,
Not where you answer the questions, call us, message us.
yeah, I mean, that's been a constant struggle. And I feel like we've made some improvements over time so that people know where to reach out to.
Right.
But unfortunately,
You're always gonna have.
it's incredibly common. People are like, I have this question. I know I could even ask Google first, but I'm just gonna
But-
ask Facebook.
Yeah,
And
that's not just the school district anyways.
Yeah, Google tells me.
Is this
it's-
business, is this business open?
I think that I would a little bit disagree on the communication trees not being complete in that some of this is in the handbooks. The handbooks, the parent handbooks and the student handbooks clearly delineate who you should call and when. If you have a problem, you call the teacher. Then if that doesn't, and we have a policy about it. It's also in the handbooks. I also believe that this particular one, if you have somebody that's going to take the time to look for a tree, they've already figured out their.
They
I don't
True.
think this is gonna-
yeah,
yes, making the communication tree is only gonna help the people that already look to see where.
What,
They're
and think
supposed to
through
communicate.
before.
And
doing-
even from an athletic standpoint, in the athletic meeting, it's okay, 24 hours cool down, then talk to your coach if you still have an issue.
And that's a
but,
real trick when your husband is the coach.
uh,
So for the
you should-
entirety of track.
You
we
can't
don't have
talk
to
to them.
well,
Tell
in
my
the case
husband
like
to
that,
coach.
if we're determining that it's not needed, we could potentially drop it. This was something that came in the last plan because it was something that a couple of people had brought to my attention as something that could be helpful. If we feel that it's been achieved in other ways and we've educated people in a different way, maybe that's all we need to do.
I do agree that it's really not a ton needed because it is out there and the people who are going to jump the line right to the superintendent are gonna jump the line whether we have a tree or not.
True.
And the superintendent then goes back to the policy. And says, and pushes it back to where it goes.
Mm.
That particular one, I'm not entirely sure
Okay.
is worth the time and effort. Because that will always change too.
Yeah.
Contact so-and-so who's no longer in any event. I think the parts that are important are already in handbooks. And the questions that are outside of the box of that, you're not gonna go digging through the website for a tree to figure out who do you call if
Well,
you
then,
wonder about.
if you are a person who has thought through your problem, but you still don't know who to go to, most of the time, you're either gonna start with the classroom teacher or you're gonna start at the building principal and go, who do I reach out to?
Or you're just gonna call the main office and be like, okay, this is my problem, send me to the right place.
Yep.
So when I'm looking at the original plan, the updated 2021 and this, I do see some pieces. that fit within what we're hoping to accomplish now, which is kind of streamlining where we are, what is our next step forward. Throughout all three of them, I see an audit of our practices. We've done 2 of those. We sent out similar surveys of how are things going, getting stakeholder views, and our survey responses increased dramatically. I'm wondering if that's the next thing. I will say, I wonder if we've gone to another extreme, and if we ask, do we give too much information? We went from
No
no,
communication.
Right.
people not feeling like they were being
To
communicated
communication
to.
overload.
I wonder how people are feeling at this point
Yeah.
about too much communication and would like it curtailed a little bit. So I wonder about an audit to what are the things that you're still feeling like you need consistent communication from versus the things that we're giving you consistent information from. We also have done we've done 2 of what we've said in here, we were gonna do quarterly district, and we said that in 2019, that we were gonna do district something's going out to let people in our stakeholders and our communities know. We've done 2 of those. I would really like an audit back on the effectiveness of that process. That was more costly because we printed them. But I also wonder about their actual, I feel like my hypothesis is that they were helpful and good, and people would liked those documents. But I think that we should find out because
But yeah, there were also people that said, wow, this costs a lot of money, I bet. I mean, I can tell I heard that specifically.
well, and in the broad scheme of
There's both
things,
sides.
$1,000 is not a lot of money.
Right.
I definitely
But-
think it's worth sending out.
I
One,
wonder-
we need, that's part of our, I think that was part of the agenda, was finding out what the community likes and doesn't like at where we stand now.
Mhm.
And I think part of that does include the broader community and those mail outs. And
I will-
did you like the mail out? Did you find it useful? Did you not? Do you
Yeah,
want us
yeah.
to
In
continue? Because
2019.
if nobody liked it, that's money that we don't have to spend.
In 2019, we put in here that every building needed to have a newsletter. We now have really good
Yeah,
newsletters
we
that
do.
come out very consistently. I think that has been an out of the park when all 3 buildings have good,
Very high
consistent.
quality, yeah,
I know what I'm gonna
Same
get,
day, comes out on the same
same day from
same
each one that
format.
was, like, Ringe has their day, Jaffrey has their day in the high school, but I know what I'm gonna get. So I'd like to have feedback from people on how have we done with that. We haven't done any internal communication stuff. So one of the things we talked about both of these years was how does the internal staff know about school board meetings? And it's on, I can go looking for it. I know there's a school board meeting because I put it on my calendar because it's part of my job.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't be hard for us, once you have that agenda, to mail it to all district. Here's the agenda for this school board meeting. And then ta-da, that takes the internal communication about board matters right off of here. And people know it's there, they've got the link to it. Is that? Instead of
I
people.
do
having to
also
search
think that
for it.
adds to the communication fatigue though.
Yeah,
That's it,
I
that's just
like,
the step.
no, I know, even staff wise, like I know for me, I work for UMass, I get stuff I don't care about all the time. Like I'm not a nurse, I'm not a clinician, I don't need to know that stuff. If I don't have anything on the school board agenda, I don't need to know about the school
So
board
that's a
agenda.
good,
So
let's ask people,
most
we
people-
thought that
definitely,
in
I
our
think-
committee, we thought that they needed to know that.
I
Maybe
definitely,
teachers don't care.
I definitely think it's something to ask if they want it or if they don't. But like for me, when I worked for the district, I had the calendar saved in my Google, so I knew when it was coming up, quick look. Is there anything on the agenda I need to know? Nope, I don't need to go. But I
Well,
think sending it out is just one more thing for Nick to do.
Abby,
that
you're right. it
people
might
are
be another
probably
thing
gonna
that people are
ignore.
Like, I don't need to see this.
It's
Well-
not like the staff doesn't know where to go to find it.
Well, I would say that on I guess 2 points. So, speaking to surveys specifically, we did the 2019 survey, we did the 2021 survey. When I did the 2021 survey, I tried to mimic questions as best I could
Mm.
so that we could try to get a gauge for how things have improved over the course of 2 years. I think there was a lot of value in being able to look at that data
Mhm.
comparatively. We haven't taken a step back in any of those areas in terms of what we're doing, what we're trying to offer, as said here by a couple people. If anything, we might be doing too much in some areas now. I think that there could be value in doing a different survey that asks completely different questions for the most part, that asks what people want to see, what do they see too much of,
Yeah.
what are different methods? Do you like this thing that we've done? How do you feel about the mobile app? How do you feel about different newsletters? How do you feel about mailings? So I can work on generating that if we
'Cause I
want.
wonder if
Yeah,
there's
I agree.
things in
There's
this
been
plan-
enough change that.
I wonder if there's things in
Yeah.
this plan that we can eradicate at this
Yeah.
point, that are no longer,
Up-
frankly, from 2019 and even 2021, they're no longer applicable for people who, they're not worried about that as their communication.
Right,
So I keep going through this, oh, we didn't do that, do we need to?
right, exactly.
Yeah.
And
We
I
do
do,
that.
and we've
We need to.
improved so much from the original communication meeting that I don't think using the same questions. That I think we need a new baseline.
Yeah. I totally agree. And I think
I-
it's more about like addressing these things like fatigue, like instead of having like.
We had no
instead of having
communication,
like a
now we've got.
5-page newsletter that like honestly, like.
The high
things like
school one,
I can't read it on
the
my
first
phone.
part.
I still have one of these older phone. I like the small phone. And it's like I gotta zoom in, which is great. I love that the information's there. But am I missing stuff? Cause it's not like
Right,
bulletized, that's.
I do a quick,
Unfortunately,
I do a quick
I
review
receive
and,
information like, which probably like a lot of people sometimes like. Headlines and bullets these days. So is there? While that's great, is there something else or is there a section of it that's like, I'm getting out of myself?
Yeah.
Well, and there's a real difference between the middle and high school sends out a weekly that's just bullets and whatnots, and then a monthly
Mm.
full newsletter.
right,
Right.
Which gives you that there's a principles and all of the things that are coming up and what's been going on.
Text.
That's only once a month, and the other weeks is links to, here's the plays coming, here's some video. I mean, it's a much faster, quick.
Well, and I think there's some training and mindfulness that needs to take place on the staff and administrative side even. To understand that how we are looking at some of these things are changing, because this. Document might look great, 8.5 by 11
But most
printed,
people are
doesn't look great on a phone.
I'd say like
Right.
90% of the people are looking at it on the phone.
Like one thing we did or
That's-
tried,
Good
That's a
audit
question to
questions.
ask, right?
right.
How
are
are
you
you
reading it?
looking at the information that comes to you, what format are you using?
Yeah.
because when you look at, for example, when we did that first newsletter for the budget, one thing that I did for the Facebook post was rather than posting the full PDF and having people have to scroll and look in the phone, I broke down each section into its own like photo more or less. So that you had a smaller section that was digestible, bigger, you could see it. You didn't have to, zoom in on a screen and kind of go back and forth and hope that you saw it. So a lot of it's just that accessibility. And if we have a lot of people looking mobily, we need to make sure that these things are designed to be
And I
read
think these are
mobily.
good problems to have,
Yeah.
like, hey, we have all this great information out there. Now it's just a matter of
Are you receiving it?
delivering it effectively. And I really see that being like one of the main focuses of kind of this next step. So
Yeah.
How to, now that we have it all,
Yeah,
deliver it to the right
definitely,
people at the right time effectively.
definitely add the question of how are you
Or should
reading
I
it
say
on your
more
phone, on a
effectively?
computer, on a,
Because I think a lot of it is being
Desktop
done
version or
effectively,
mobile
but how do we kind of optimize it?
Well, and if we, for example, say people want more physical information, but we don't have the money to be constantly mailing all these things out, are there certain community hubs that we can be leaving these things at? Can we leverage relationships with the libraries, the post offices,
yeah.
the town offices to be able to say, oh, hey, if you don't like reading this or having this physically, you can stop by
Yeah,
this office and we have them there. Or you can come in and we can print them out physically for you. One point that I had to go back to on the school board, I do think that we have more room to improve how we communicate information happening at the school board level. I did at one point try to pitch an idea to the school board. It didn't really get a lot of traction. I'd love to continue to kind of hammer it in to see if we can get this, because I think it's really important. And I get it, it's another newsletter, but we have these 20-30 minute conversations about committee meetings. We should be able to have a relatively concise couple paragraph thing that says, hey, we met on this date. Here's what we discussed. Reminder, here are the days, times, locations that we meet. We should be able to have a section that has a quick little summary, occasionally, maybe notes from the board chair or something that says, hey, here's what the board's been working on. Here are the things that have come to our, desks on school board meeting nights. Like, here's the stuff that you guys in the community need to know about so that we can try to avoid this issue of, oh, well, I didn't hear about this. And it's like, well, the school board's been talking about it for 3 months. Like, you know, some of this issue
Yeah.
policy KFR and like, oh, well, I didn't know about it. It's like, well, we've only approved the new version of KFR 4 times this year. Like, it's not like we haven't been working on it. So I'd love to work on looking at areas like that where we're not communicating as much and how do we get that information in a solid area, because not everybody's going to have time to read a 7-page document of minutes and wade through. Minutes aren't always going to tell you the details that people want to hear, and not everybody's going to watch a 2-3 hour school board video.
I
Yeah.
definitely agree with
Yes,
that.
we-
And not only that, but also making sure that it's digestible for the average parent who doesn't know what KFR stands
Yeah,
for.
yeah.
So like, general information, the school board worked on facilities. This is what we did. The school board worked on this recently. This is
And out of what we talked about at facilities, it may just be one thing that we think people. would be
like,
most
here's the
interested in.
important part.
By the way, we're redoing the Pratt this summer.
Right, because most people that don't
Oh,
watch
okay.
the school board meetings have no clue
Right?
or don't read.
Yeah, I think there's definitely room for improvement. There, I would get on board with something like that, just to say. You know, I'm on the school board and I can tell you how many times I've gone back and read like old school board minutes and things like that. It just, you know, life happens and it doesn't happen, so it's almost like you need to be like, all right, if people aren't looking at it.
Yeah, I mean,
What
I
can we
listen
do?
to
And
them
it's
while I work the YouTube videos, but I don't think many people watch the entire.
We get about
school board
30 to
meeting.
50 per video.
Yeah, which in the grand scheme of an entire community is not very much.
Yeah.
And that doesn't count unique viewers either. So somebody could have theoretically watched it 6 times in a row
Oh, okay.
and it would
So
count
it's
6 times.
It's interactions with the video, not how many, do you see if they watch the complete video?
I can go in and look at that level
But
of
like
data. It
those-
gives you
those
kind of a,
50, is that just 50 that could have watched like 2 minutes and then watched another 2 minutes later?
I haven't done the deep dive. I think YouTube classifies a view as anything over like 2 or 3 minutes. So it doesn't mean they watched the whole thing. It means they
Right.
watched a small section at least. There are data and graphs and bits of information I can investigate more that show kind of a curve of like, okay, you have good attendance here and then boom, it drops off right here.
That could be the key is how long the YouTube, like maybe break the school board meetings down into this is the first section that we talked about such and such. You're only gonna watch that.
I'd say
Here-
like 99% of the community isn't gonna watch a 3-hour
No.
school board, meeting,
Exactly.
It's me.
right? Yeah.
Like I
but
said,
that's great.
I don't even, I listen to it while I
But,
work
you
and
know,
if something catches my
50%
ear, I'm
of the
like, "Ooh, what's
community
that
would
about?"
be interested in.
Oh, well,
some more
a lot of
concise-
them would be, honestly, like, a lot of them would be interested to know, oh, we might be thinking of doing something with the property that the other property we own, but if they're not watching the school board meetings.
When we don't have to put in the stuff that people don't care about, you know, if there's a bunch of
Right.
budget transfers that are just moving money around, like for the purposes of having it in the right budget line, doesn't really matter.
Right.
If we move like a bunch of money because we're trying to do a project like in the Pratt with a lot of the flooring, that's like hey, we did a bunch of stuff related to that. Here's the new staff members we got. Here are the
Yeah.
policies that got
Exactly.
approved and why it matters to you. And
But I-
phrasing it through that lens of this is stuff that matters to the community instead of just here are all the things that happen.
Right, and I
Well,
think if
that's so
we,
true.
if the community decides that the mailer is good, adding a small section to that mailer of, this is what the school board has done for the district. Like, these are the things that we've decided in short, small blurbs that people can digest easily.
Or to
Would be super helpful.
To be found on the school board website, on school board meeting notes, on this date, we discussed using I mean, you could even, well, on this, you could go to the website on this date where you'll find out where we've been discussing the use of the 202 property. The bullets. That's
Yeah.
interesting to me. I'll go look for that
Right,
information, or you could put one of those things you could do with your picture.
Yeah.
phone, you
the
know, those
QR
things.
codes.
That.
When I
I've
specifically
got some questions for us. We're ready, let's make a survey.
want to make a survey,
Yes,
do you want to go over the questions now? Do you want to send them to me and I can work on it and I can send a survey out? How do we want to?
It's here.
I got. it.
Oh, 1 second, let me get a thing to write something down.
I wrote them down. You can surely read my chicken scratch. What format are you using to view your info most often, computer or phone? What information is most important to you? What are we missing? Staff, this is kind of, maybe we do a separate staff one.
Yeah.
Do you want more information about board matters? Physical documentation and mailers, how helpful were they? Are you using the app? How important would a suggestion box be? Is that something that keeps rolling through? And if nobody
Toss it
thinks it's
off the
important, then off it goes. What are your thoughts about our website? Do you feel informed or heard? So that's the two ways of communication. Customer service is in here a few times. I'm wondering how people are feeling about our frontline customer service at this point, as opposed to 2019, which was a problem. How often do you review our calendar, and does it have what you need? And how satisfied are you with the communication with our district? Those are the things that, combing through these and what we've been talking about, are the ones that are still kind of outstanding. And are they worth what?
Well, and probably what I would do is just create some basic demographic things in the beginning to say, you know,
Yeah.
to break down by school, to break down by, are you a staff, community member, et cetera, so that we can be able to look in pockets of saying, you know, people really love what this school's doing. We need to have work to do in that school.
And the forms, like if you put, are you using the app, and it says yes, then it takes you straight to question number 2. How useful do you find it? And if they say no, it just skips you to the next question.
Yep.
So it could get.
Or if you say no, it says, why do you not? Is there something hindering you? Is there something we're missing on the app that you don't use the app because it's not on there?
I rarely use the app. I have the app. I rarely use it. One, it's not hugely user friendly if you don't have really, because it takes a long time for each of those different buttons to open, and we don't have great Wi-Fi in here. And from home, I just would use my computer, but I'm wondering about other people.
I use my app a lot because it's especially during this like sports season, it's a quick, easy link to sports or any of that stuff.
When I think that's the
With
thing to
calendar.
ask is for people using it, what do you what
Yeah.
buttons are you
you
using? What do
for?
you like
What's
most?
it
Yeah.
missing?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I don't personally use the app ever other than to check in on it, because
I'm
built
constantly.
I built the website, so I know where everything is. So I don't need to take the extra step of pulling out my phone, wondering if the Wi-Fi in the building's going to work for me, when I can just go to a laptop and just go to the right spot.
That being said, I usually have good service anywhere, so it loads really quick. So
In my concrete office, I just don't. So those are kind of the things. I feel like we could sit here and talk in circles, but we don't know.
No, I think every
Besides the
2
5 of
years
us.
as well. I think it's been 2
Well,
years, right?
And it did say in 2019, it said we were gonna do this yearly,
Right.
create a yearly audit. That we would then, it says, develop an accurate and easy to read, understand calendar. Nope, that's the calendar.
we trust that a yearly's
It's-
on there.
it
You
says
don't need
something
to
in
read
here
it
about-
verbatim.
Yeah, yeah.
That we would do a
It's time.
yearly, develop and administer an annual survey to all stakeholders for the purpose of gaining insight and feedback on current practices, as well as evaluating current or ongoing efforts.
I definitely do think though, like we've had quite a lot of surveys, and as much as I want to get this information now. I don't know about you guys, but end of
Survey
year,
fatigue.
I'm like. The amount of information that's coming into my head is almost too much. Like,
Which also
From the
hits
different
that I'm
places.
being communicated
Right.
with too much.
it's also like finding that right time to send out that you're not.
Yeah,
There
I get
isn't a
lost in
thousand
the
others,
noise
right?
now.
Because I think right now, if we were to send it out now,
I just got
you're
one
not
tonight
gonna-
about the new logo.
that's what I mean. If we
That's
were to
much more
send one
exciting.
out today, I don't know that anyone would respond because they just had, like, didn't we have a survey last week or the week before too?
When I think that,
We did have a couple about how important are these things about our logo.
well, the middle
Yes.
high school just sent one out today.
Mhm. And I also think that we will get. It's not a hot button issue right now. 'cause
Right.
Communication seems to be going well, so I'm not sure how much that's telling in and of itself too.
Well, but I also think that there's value in seeing how many responses we get, and is
True.
there a big drop off in how many responses we get? Because that could just inform that idea of people are tuning out to the point that they don't really even care or mind.
I feel like if we did send one out and we don't get a lot of response, it would be beneficial to possibly send out a very similar survey. later on, like mid next year, when we aren't in overload, like not the beginning of the year when parents are all frazzled.
Well,
But
and we can send, even if we do one survey, the data that comes back to us in the form of a spreadsheet indicates what date people filled out the survey.
yeah,
So we could always do the same survey and we could make it live toward the end of the school year and see like, okay, do we only get 10 here and they're pretty negative? Oh, we pushed it again out in July and we got a few more responses, but they're mostly positive. So that fatigue's
Right.
kind of dropped off more. So I think that if we do it in an intelligent way, we can get all those data points and really analyze.
and that would also help with, is it fatigue of getting too much stuff? And that's most likely why people didn't answer and people are answering at this other time.
Well, and I think creating more diversity in messaging could have the ability to potentially remove some of the fatigue. I mean, obviously, if you get too many methods and ways and areas to communicate, it gets overwhelming. But if we can focus on like, okay, we're doing some surveys here, we're doing some photos here, we're doing a video there, we're doing a newsletter, and like just creating that diversity to make sure that, I'm a parent that's just immediately not going to read anything over a page. You sent me something that's 5 pages, I'm not reading it. I'm not taking the time. But oh, you sent me a 1-page thing with a couple photos, or oh, you gave me a blurb on Facebook with like 5 photos, and hey, there's my kid. That's really awesome. So I think it's just looking at things like that. And also just looking at consistency across schools. I think some schools are like really pushing out certain methods of communication, and it might be overwhelming to maybe those parents. Some schools have asked for more of a certain type and me to help them with doing a certain type of communication. And okay, at what point is it a tipping point of being too much?
Right.
Because we can look at our Facebook data and say, okay, we're posting so much to the point that our views are actually going down. Or, this one school's posting so much that nobody's really tuning into their stuff, but people really love stuff from this school. So we need to get more out there on that. So I think that a lot of that data dive on statistics that we have and things that we can generate through a survey could help inform this committee's work in terms of where we branch out. But I did take down those questions. I think that if we let the committee members, both you guys and even notifying the people that aren't here saying, hey, send me some potential communication survey questions that you guys have, give the committee like a week to submit questions, and then I can create a survey. I can send it back to everybody, say, hey, how do you feel about this? What do you want changed? And then we could try to get it sent out, a little sooner than later. I think there could be a lot of value in that.
I think it informs our committee. Right now, there's a lot of stuff in here that I don't know
That we either.
how
don't need
how
or-
useful it is anymore from 2019
Yeah.
and even 2021. And there are other things that I wonder if are more useful for what we do as a committee.
Well, I think there are some points that have been brought up in the past couple meetings and in conversations that I've had that are not even touched upon in this plan. This plan is we're sending out information, we're emailing, we're putting stuff on social media, website, app. Chris brought up a lot of really good points about in-person communication. And I think more items about that. If we decide that physical mailers are important, more language in there about those physical things.
Yeah, because I think it really is. And I read like the past surveys, like people like the electronic communication, like that's obviously how you're gonna reach the most people these days,
Right.
right? So we've kind of like checked that box, now we're refining. And now maybe is the time to start talking about like, all right, what are we really doing for in-person stuff? Are people like, is it too much electronic communication? That
And
people are
nobody
feeling
knows.
like it's a faceless organization, right? So how do you put like a face in a person? So
Yeah,
that
how do you?
Daisy
person-
is out talking to the people in Jaffrey and Chris is like available to talk to the people in Ringe. And it puts like an actual human being behind it.
Coffee with Chris.
Yeah, it's actually a campaign idea. I never executed that one, but
Oh,
But I
Maybe
bet
next
you do
time.
better.
But
if you did
seriously,
cookies.
yeah,
If
I
you
would
did
love to
cookies
do
with Chris,
something like
that
that.
would
And
be
I guess
I
that,
would go to either. I'm just saying, I'm up for coffee.
but things
or
like that, like I would do, I like that sort of stuff, but I don't know if I'm still figuring out what the rules are and stuff here.
But I
But
also think,
like things like that, I think would go a long way towards combating that maybe
The negative.
fatigue.
It also
that-
goes a long way to combat the
Yeah.
negative, just having you're less likely to hate things that you see in person
Yeah,
versus
right.
things you
But-
see online. If you're coming into the school for events or coming into the school
Yeah.
for things, you see the stuff that's going on, good and bad.
Yeah.
But
And I've talked a lot about that at like a bunch of meetings, is there, I live in Ringe and I have a 5th grader and a 6th grader right now, right? So I know a lot of these parent groups, hear a lot of that talk, and I've talked about it at a bunch of meetings. Cause I'm still figuring out how to try to address the problem
right,
and do something about it. And I've asked other people. But again, I'll say it again here. 5th grade parents being concerned about sending their kids to 6th grade, I think in both schools is an issue, right? And I think so, one of the issues is communication about the middle school to that demographic of, 3rd, 4th elementary school parents. I think there's a great opportunity there to shine a light on the good things that are happening at the middle and high school.
right.
Where there's, to me, just a complete void of information now that's from the schools that's being filled by
the
people on Facebook.
Right.
Essentially, let's call it that, and other people.
Well, and I think being mindful of that as a more general concept and the idea of we have our individual school communities, but we are one district.
Yeah.
We are 2 towns that come together a lot on a lot of different things. And how do we make sure that those connections are more seamless and that you don't feel like this is its own thing in a vacuum, this is its own thing in a vacuum, feeling like you can have that, transitional piece. I mean,
Yeah, the transitions I think are real important, like maybe well,
So
I'd say, I know that even parents of students in preschool are concerned about sending kids to the middle school at this point, right?
But I
So there's
also,
time there.
they are, but at the same point, I hear the same thing from almost any other elementary.
Oh.
Where multiple elementaries are going into.
Yeah. I mean, it's
It's
not
that-
our district.
Little fish in the big pond.
Yeah.
That it's definitely not unique to our district, but it does need
Yeah,
to be
and
addressed.
there's a lot of stuff that's, it has nothing to do with any district. The middle school is a great time to change and kids are
It has to
growing
do
up.
with the fact that
There's-
your kid's growing
There's
up.
all
and
that
it's a
stuff, right?
fun-
My 5-year-old is a lot different than my 12-year-old.
Right, and
as far as those
oftentimes
things,
it's the
but-
parents that are more nervous than the
So
kids.
my question for you, Chris, in this. is,
Yeah.
As you're hearing these things, is it on like a an RMS parent page? So when we talk about Facebook, I know that there's a middle high school parent page because I'm on it.
Yeah.
And I see things on there and more I'm seeing other people, somebody will put something on and other people in our community will say, that's not accurate. You need to reach out to, here's the right answer.
Right.
That's not how things are going. But I wonder, because that's 6 through 12 already. I wonder about the elementary people on an RMS or a JGS parent page are only talking to the parents. They're not talking to people that like, oh no, that really wasn't an issue, except for the people who have kids in both schools. So I'm just
Yeah.
wondering about where that information
I think
is.
there's loud voices, all over the place, to tell you the
So-
truth. I'm talking about Facebook pages, I'm talking about in person, I'm talking about all those sort of ways.
Yeah.
I can speak for the JGS parents group page. I know Tammy Shea is a moderator of it, and so when you submit a post, it has to be approved for it to go through. Typically, probably 95% of them get approved. Because it's somebody asking a question that they're not sure the answer to. But it's gonna be one of those questions that 30 other parents have that same question and just haven't asked it. The few that do get denied are usually the ones that are going to either be a hot button or are just completely inaccurate questions or information. And I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure if it's denied, she'll send you a message with the correct information. Or at least she'll say, you need to go talk to whoever. So I know the JGS one has more control because Tammy Shea is right there and she's not letting the
But I think
naysayers.
that subject is an area that I'd like to explore, I don't know, through the survey, because I've talked to administrators about it, I've talked to other people and had people say, well, we don't think it's a real problem.
Oh, it's a 100% a problem.
Well,
It's
right.
just how do you address it?
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
But you'd be surprised. I've had people you'd be surprised, say, well, we don't think it's that big of a deal. I think it's a big deal. I'm gonna keep talking about it.
Well, and I think we're talking about two separate issues right now at the same time. One of them is, do we have a hole in communication in which people feel like they're missing information or not able to have that channel?
Yeah.
Because, you know, as a fifth grade parent, you spend a lot of time in one school with all these people. And now as a parent, even, you know, obviously it's a big transition for your kid, but as a parent, yeah.
A newsletter about it. You see one line on the newsletter that says step up day for kids on June something.
So there's obviously like ways, anytime that we see, even if it's loud voices that are trying to be inflammatory, there are ways that we can improve that are not just responses to loud voices, because we want to be careful in that we're not just responding to every time somebody screams or yells about something, because if we get that type of communication,
Yeah,
we're back to being
And I'm very careful
reactive.
about considering that, considering whether
Right.
I'm being reactive, or, and this is something when I, ran for school board, people would say like, oh, yeah, you're looking out for your kids. No, not really. It's not. I mean, I'm looking out for all the kids. So I like have this filter when I'm saying this, like, Chris, are you really just saying this because you're a parent of a fifth grader and a sixth grader and you're like trying to make things better for your kids? Not really, because my kids are fine. They're going to school here. I'm seeing this as like a
If you're
Yeah.
seeing it as a
district-wide
consistent
problem, and people
topic that keeps
actively
coming
come
up,
to me and
then-
come to me over and over again, and, or,
I see that as similar, not an issue with the way that we are getting communications out there, which is the goal of this committee,
Right.
is making sure that we are communicating effectively.
Yep.
Not necessarily what we are communicating in a sense, like to me, that is a branding, which I know is on the board right now, but a different type of branding, like where is the disconnect with, why do people, like, that's looking at the school morale and why is it that XYZ school has a bad image? And it's rebranding that, not just changing the logo, not just changing this, but how do we get the community to see that
Yeah.
this school is great, which is a sense of communication, but I think that in and of itself almost needs to be an entirely separate committee. You know what I mean? Because it is
Well-
more than just getting it out. It is getting to the root of why people think that.
When it comes to those whys and the questions like that, again, there's kind of two separate areas. It's kind of looking at, you know, the topic that we're having of, if somebody is having an issue, chances are somebody else is having the issue. Either they haven't asked the question, they've asked in a different way. So if we hear about something, we need to think about how we can best communicate to make that better. And communication isn't always a big district level, whatever. So I feel like in some cases, we as a committee can look at some of these issues, and maybe it's a different committee, maybe it's a directive on me to have those conversations and bring different groups together. Sometimes I have found that there are issues where, like, I'm not going to share the specifics, but I had a situation in which one party was talking about this as one issue, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it this way. Get another group that was like, hey, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it that way. And there was a big disconnect, and there was an issue with the project. It wasn't going to get done because nobody was talking. Sometimes it's just bringing those people together and saying, okay, here's your issues. Here's your issues. Let's have a discussion. Let's figure out how we can fix this so that it can actually move forward, because this has a benefit to everybody. So in some essences and ways, it's looking at things like that. We have a problem with fifth grade, sixth grade transition. How do we address that? How do we pull people together so that we can get more involvement in ways that people actually get the information they need? We have the issue of branding, identity, etc. Looking at different schools, the perception in the community. You know, there are a number of different Facebook groups, for example, that have different levels of conversations. I'm a member of at least, I think there's only one that I'm aware of that I'm not a member of, and I don't know if I'll ever be able to become a member of that one, but issues aside. I try to keep mindful of those different conversations and not just what the question is or what the comment is, but what the responses are. And I feel like Jen brought up a very interesting point in that when I first got here, there was a lot of negative stuff on social media and people would just be like, oh yeah, like I totally agree with that. Like, yeah, that's an issue. And everybody would just very like bash the school.
Yeah.
We're getting to this point where we're starting to see this shift in which people are like, oh no, like that's not true at all. Like, what are you talking about? Or why are you trying to reach out in this way? You're not actually, it's clear that you're not trying to get an answer. You're just trying to stir up a controversy, or you'll see somebody that'll bring up a question, but it's really just a means to bring up a big political issue that's happening nationally that has nothing to do with our school or our district, but they can then talk about it and act like we're somehow doing it, not doing it, figuring out if we're doing it. So I think that being mindful of these different conversations happening in different areas, what is the blowback? What is the kind of reception? What is the perception in the community? How do we continue to create that image so that we don't need to fight it? There are people that will stick up for us. You know, I made a very conscious decision after talking with a bunch of people when I first got here, because I was already in a lot of those groups because I was a reporter of, you know, now I'm on the district, you know, end of things. Do I go into these different groups and do I start responding to people and directing them to the right area? That's never going to work. It's just going to seem like I'm deflecting. I've had people try to pull me into conversations and I stay completely away from them because I don't see any value in it. So a lot of it's, how do we build those people in the community that can be advocates for the schools, the district, et cetera, so that when one of these inflammatory things come up, we can just have somebody say, oh, like, that's interesting that you have that perspective. Have you looked at this document that shows that here's the growth curve of this thing that you were saying was not growing at all? Or, you know, you may say that this is happening, but we verified in this place that it's not. So I think that it's a lot of different areas in both addressing legitimate concerns or looking at the inflammatory thing to find the concern, deal with that. And then also, how do we change that perception so that we just don't have to deal with as much of the inflammatory issue, problem, so on.
Yeah, I definitely think that do have a lot more community members that are sticking up, but I also know that when things get rejected from one site,
They
One-
just
they
reappear
just
in another one.
reappear in another one or on someone's personal page. So it's your perspective of getting people that are vested in the school, that have a vested interest, that say, no, my kid loves it here. They got this much out of it or whatnot is really beneficial. And I think figuring out a way to showcase that, of even just not one-sided, but like, ask all the seniors as they're leaving, what was your favorite thing? What did you not
See,
like?
I'm
What do
thinking
you want
the same
improved?
thing with sixth
Like,
graders.
Coming from students would be huge.
I'm-
I
Right.
don't know
I'm
how to
thinking
make
the
that
same thing
happen,
right
but
now about sixth graders. You have a
Right.
whole group of people who are worried about sending their kids here.
Right, ask the
Let's
sixth
ask the
graders,
sixth
what did you
graders, what
love
was
about
good,
middle
what was-
school?
What was good, what was hard, what
those are the exact same things I've been talking about.
Right,
what you wish
and
you had
so
known?
to me, that is another,
And yeah,
And it's not like
that's a video.
corporate communicate, it's not like, you know, the principal or the superintendent
I
saying,
think-
it's like a kid with a hoodie and a baseball hat on saying like, you know,
or
I
even,
really liked this class, but you know, I wish we had better lunch.
or even
something
coming
like
from
that.
parents, like, honestly, like,
Yeah,
when my kids first started here, communication was non-existent or barely there. Like, you went from RMS where you had Thursday notes to the middle high school where you were like, now my kid has like 6 different teachers and I don't know what I'm doing. Like, so just having parents to say, listen, it's actually improved a lot from when my kid was in 6th grade until now. You get to know it, here's what's going on. But having it from parents and students is super beneficial, but I think that almost needs to be an entirely separate committee
it's a big
on,
issue.
because it is, you need to get to the root, but you also need
Strategic
to,
and sensitive. And
yes.
Well, I don't
we'll have to
know.
arrive at the answer in the next 5 minutes, in other words.
No, I was gonna do
Let
my
me just
entire
ring the
dissertation
bell
on it.
and we're gonna,
I truly, one of my topics for dissertation was transition from an elementary to a middle.
So you're
There
gonna
is
do it.
hordes of research on the difficulty regardless
Yeah,
of age, regardless of when,
Of where you
it's
are.
just, it's never easy.
And we've all been to middle school, so we understand that too.
We all
like,
think
from
that you're-
anecdote.
But we also all remember the worst parts of our middle school, and so
Because
that's
we
what we're
were
worried about our kids. We're like, oh my goodness.
Well, and I don't know if this is anything that we can form or not. This would probably be more of like a Heather question, but like, I know we've done a lot of work at like the middle high school to form these like mentoring groups and like partnerships between like
Yeah.
high school level kids and mentoring.
So
Middle
there's an
schools.
8th grade to 6th grade group. So that the 8th graders and some of the kids that were the mentors, I was like, okay, rose to an incredible challenge and mentored the 6th grades as they came in, and they continue to be partners throughout the year.
But you almost need eighth or middle, like 6th through 8th graders to elementary school that are like, we're
gotta
gonna
start
be your
early.
big buddies and get you super excited to come to our school, because we're gonna tell you all about how awesome our school is.
Yeah, I think anything like that.
It's getting it early.
Starting it a little bit earlier. I don't know what the answer is, but all of those things.
We're just gonna bring preschoolers in here and have
Well, yeah.
preschool day where the
Well, some of
preschoolers
it
come
is,
and
right?
hang out with the middle school.
I think the elementary parents are used to like, they're comfortable in their school, they know the teachers' faces, they come here, it's different, right? They've never
And
been
like I
here.
said,
they don't know
even
the
just going
teachers.
from, you have one teacher, you know who the teacher is, to now my kid has multiple teachers is a big change.
So Heather Dean just chimed in via chat, so I want to read this out. She says that RMS just had a wonderful video shared to the staff that students where students shared about what they love about the school and teachers. I think it's something that all schools should do and be shared to incoming middle high school kids. I agree with that.
That was very sweet. I think I was welling up a little bit when I was watching. It was very
Yeah.
sweet. I was like,
So, you know, having those projects that may not even ever see the light of day, at least externally, unless it's, I guess, shared beyond that, but like having some of those internal projects that can help staff, help students. She also says, when things come from students, it hits home more and shares the positive impacts of what is happening in our district and schools. She said that buddy classes would be great. We have buddy classes at the elementary level. So again, is there more, I guess, it seems like we're doing all these different works where we're doing mentoring partnership. Can we start that partnership a little bit earlier? Because obviously it's easier to partner up people 6th grade to 8th grade because they're in the building. Is there anything like cross school stuff that we can do to help? And then she also said, at my last mentor mentee meeting, we discussed getting schools into schools.
Yeah.
So I think
That
that
would be super
seems to be the connection is, can we more organically form that bridge in different ways so that we can have, you know, in the spring, we probably won't be able to do anything meaningful this year just because we're kind of in the moment, but you know, can we develop a plan so that next year there are those
Yeah,
connections
totally
made
agree.
earlier?
Cause this is a critical.
I say ice cream social. 5th graders get to come to the middle school, check it out. Everybody loves
It's an
ice
easy
cream.
one, right? Totally agree.
Unless you're lactose intolerant, then you gotta find something else.
Right, it is something like that, and I know.
But they make dairy-free ice cream.
There we go. We'll have a dairy-free option.
So you got to
They
think
just
about the diabetics as well.
Oh, and a sugar-free option. Yeah.
I know
And there goes all the joy.
with, bribes
A
always
sugar-
work, you know, here's some ice cream.
It's a positive
It
reinforcement.
is, it is.
Ice
No, it's
cream always
exactly
works.
right.
We don't call any of this bribery. It's positive reinforcement.
I love dog.
No, I mean,
So
I
I
agree
don't
with all
disagree.
those
I think the
ideas.
subcommittee on transition,
Yeah,
yeah,
it sounds like that there's people in the community. This is, we have a subcommittee on elementary and relooking at the elementary schools. Is there something we could be doing different? There's a facilities subcommittee working right now on. the
is that
stuff,
a
and
committee that
is
has to be put together by the school board? Or is that a subcommittee that the communication committee can say, we need a subcommittee on? this?
Typically, those like those more short-term committees are usually actually formed by the superintendent. And usually there's a defined membership and goal and even timeline established that says,
And
we
I
want-
don't think it's a communication committee.
I don't think it is
No,
either.
it's
bringing it up everywhere, cause I'd like to
It's-
get
hey,
addressed.
You know, when you have your soapbox, you know
Yeah.
what your soapbox is for. You stand on it at every place
Yeah.
you can.
I think that they could eventually recommend things to the communication committee and then we could then
Right.
take their notes and say, this is what we
Right.
need to do.
Well, and I think the communication committee has done the thing of, this is how, like, here are the ways that we communicate with our stakeholders. So, okay, if that committee wants to get a survey out, we know how to do that. If that committee wants to, send a mailing out of, here, look what we're doing, we know how to communicate.
Well,
which
usually what
are-
we do for like a short-term committee is we'd probably have a representative from the communication committee that would serve on the
Yeah.
other committee. So after that committee's done their whole thing, made their report, we could have
Chris
somebody
can
bring it,
report
yeah.
back, 'cause
Chris
we
could
know
bring it
what
back to
Chris-
us, we could discuss, and then we could
Happy to volunteer.
figure out what we're doing from there.
Not the chair of any committee yet, so I'm thinking I'll need to make up a committee.
That's
And-
why you're doing it.
It's just a power grab.
Everybody should
Give it
have that.
time.
You know,
Everybody should have a goal and something they want to work on.
It's a good goal.
It
Good
is,
goal.
absolutely a worthwhile endeavor. And I don't know that it has to be a long either.
No, no,
It's
no.
a group of people that comes together and say, this is why it's hard. What can we do about it?
We came up with like 5 good ideas.
I mean, I'll join it with you. I don't have any kids transitioning anymore unless we're talking about transitions to college, so.
And I think what we could potentially do is, so we already have these established activities that we do. We create this committee. Perhaps there's a parent or two that went through the transition this year.
Oh.
Here, I went through the 5th grade to 6th grade transition this year. Here's what I liked, here's what I didn't like. You
Right.
have some people that are, parents, other people.
Yeah.
And then you can have those different perspectives. If there are certain people that, Chris, you've talked about that have been more vocal, perhaps they could be involved.
Yeah, I definitely think it would be important to get a few people that are anti.
Oh, yeah.
On that committee, because you need to know why.
Well,
What
we need to
are,
hear all voices.
what are your reasons for not choosing to send your kid to public school? Because we don't know, we can't fix it.
And maybe the committee can meet, in the fall after they've gone through the full cycle, just since we are a little too late to start the process now, and we could have something in place for the next school year. I guess I know we're pretty well past our hour at this point. I guess just to quickly address, because I addressed everything else, uses of live streaming equipment. We've moved all this stuff from
Yep.
my office into this room over here. We're working on ways to catalog it, get it in other people's hands so that it can be utilized better. We're looking at, could we add a little bit of money in the budget that I could use for communication specific equipment, so we could expand out, have the ability to accomplish different things. Checkout system procedures for if equipment's broken, so on, have to be developed. District-wide branding, earlier today up on social media, we did put up a new survey. The company that the middle high school is working with for the new logo has given 3 drafts of a new Oriole. It's going to be a quick turnaround because we have to make sure that this mascot logo is picked before we do the flooring project. So it is kind of condensed. So I know we don't have any
Do-
live
Did
viewers.
we make sure that the bird head matches the
Yes.
font, that they're the correct animals?
That it actually.
So
is.
yeah, I've looked at all 3 of them. I have one that I really like. I'm not gonna, give my opinion here because I don't want to influence anybody, but there's,
I just want to make sure that.
but yeah, so there are 3 different
Correct.
viewpoints. There's
pieces.
they look to be actually Orioles now. So that is going to be a quick turnaround. So if you guys want to weigh in on that, I do so tonight, tomorrow morning, because I think it closes tomorrow at 2. Because we need to submit changes, revisions, thoughts, so on.
I realize the 23rd is tomorrow.
Yeah,
This month.
and
is
then-
going back.
There's 17 and a half days of school.
so that would give us brand new logos for all.
Unit and a half in science and 17 and a half days.
Nick, who is that shared out to for the logo information?
I'm sorry, what was that?
It's on the Facebook. I sent emails to.
It
Who
was
was
in-
the link shared out to about the getting feedback on the logo?
So the logo can be found on, if you go to our Facebook page, if you go to the middle school, high school website under the news section. And then if you're it was sent to the middle high school parents and staff, I believe.
Probably students.
Yeah, and students. So if you want to see it, if anybody wants to see it that didn't get the email, go to our Facebook page. It should be the most recent thing on there.
Respond to it.
Yeah, there's a community member option. So anybody who wants to weigh in, has the ability to do so.
Parent, community members.
That'll give every school a brand new logo within the past year and a half,
Yep.
2 years. So those will all be updated. We've branded colors to make sure that things are matching. It sounds like we're making sure that all these logos are on the gym floor. I think potentially this summer. I think we're even putting in some schools into like the carpeting. Like I
Yep,
think at
JGS
JGS, there's,
Intersection will have
Yep.
it into that carpet.
so there's gonna be actually the logo in the carpeting, which I think will be really cool.
Is it carpeting or tile?
It's not, it's a carpet. It's a long story.
It's a carpet and a tile.
I saw it, it's
Kind of.
really nice.
It's a
and the logo
really
looks nice.
Interesting product.
Yeah.
Okay,
I had mixed feelings about it. I feel like we're gonna be okay.
I've heard
Also,
it referred to as tile and as
Well, they're-
carpet, so I'm.
They're both correct.
They're squares of carpet-like substance,
Yeah, so it's a tile of carpeting.
but not
But
carpet.
it's not carpet.
It's not
Yeah, but
carpet,
Like
but it will be quieter.
technologically advanced carpet.
Yeah, it'll be quiet.
Quiet is.
So
good
we
thing.
just need to continue the work on that to keep reinforcing those standards. There's been discussion about, do we at this point try to rebrand the SAU to something different? Our logo is very boring. Our colors are not very well liked. What do we do to make that change? Do we perhaps, since we're all birds, incorporate some sort of nest idea? That's been my thought. I don't know. And then things like making sure letterheads are the same, exploring the idea of having, font standards and other standards like that, so that if you're seeing something from the district, you can identify like documents from a font perspective and everything else. Different letterheads, and there's also been discussions, I didn't put this on here, about creating some sort of like swag. Starting at least with staff members, so that when you're onboarded, you maybe get like a shirt, pen, a lanyard, something like that. Obviously there's a cost to that, but just creating those different items so that people feel more attached to the district. And then obviously there's been a lot of work on school stores to make those more constant and to make more variety available for people. And I'm sure when the middle high school updates their logo, that will also be revamped as well. So we went through all the items. We have come down on writing a survey. I think what we would do is finalize this survey, send it out, get some data. I know we said we weren't going to meet during the summer. I don't know if anybody would potentially have interest in meeting at some point to maybe look at doing a review and creation of a new altered plan.
I'm up for whatever.
I think if we're gonna develop a new planet, that's a half day at least, potentially a day of doing hour-long snippets, and we never stay for an hour, is hard to get something accomplished. So if we're gonna take this data to revamp the plan, I think we should have a block of time.
Nick, I'm traveling a lot this summer, but if I know a date ahead of time, I might be able to make it work.
Okay, I mean, and what I did when I made the 2021 plan was I made a draft, and we had a meeting where we talked about it. It wasn't well attended. I think it was you and me and maybe one other person, Jen. So it's kind of a whatever Nick says goes, more or less. I'd really like it to not be that this time. I'd love to have a lot more input. So if maybe
I like the whatever Nick says goes is the plan.
we can take the survey data, we can have that be more of an email where I distill data, send it out to you guys. Maybe I can work on giving you guys an opportunity to email me different ideas, plans, action items, etc. I can come up with a draft that'll make it so we don't have to meet for an incredibly long period of time. And then at that point, we're more or less editing and deciding on an existing template. I don't know if that works for people or
That
not.
sounds like a much better course of action than sitting here for 4 hours, in my opinion.
So I can only speak for myself, but because I'm away most of the summer camping, which I do go to all the school board meetings, I'm just via Zoom instead. But we will be home in July for pep camp. So July, Monday through Thursday works best on my end, just because I'm actually gonna be here.
I got no plans. So.
Okay, well, we can try to work out whatever. Obviously, people can zoom in. We do need a physical quorum to abide by school board and committee laws. So we are a committee currently of 8, so we need at least, I guess, 5 people here. In order to have a meeting. I understand that it's a little harder potentially for some of the staff members, because at least not the year-long staff members, but we can find ways to make it work, make sure everybody on the committee is included that wants to be included. I feel like there are a couple people that haven't made a meeting in a while, and perhaps we could reach out to those people, say, are you still interested? Have you just been busy? Do you want to drop off the committee? And
Then
then-
that lowers our quorum if they drop off the committee.
Yeah,
We also could put it as one of the survey questions is, would you like to join the committee?
Oh, yes.
yeah,
Meet
I
at
feel
least quarterly.
strongly.
because I think at max capacity in our current membership, we're at 9, we're a member down. I think usually we top out around 5, 6 people.
Part of me thinks if we say, would you like to join the committee, we should probably have the meeting scheduled. Like, would you like to join the committee? Our next meeting is.
Or are you interested in learning more about joining the committee?
Yeah, interesting in learning, well, joining, even attending, providing input, would you like to be involved in any way, shape or form?
Yep.
Because
That could
somebody
be,
might not
Would you
be,
like to join, attend? Here are your options. None of the above. Just tell me what happened.
so, all right, I think. It sounds like I have some marching orders to go off of to give you guys some information. It sounds like it'll be back and forth for a little bit in terms of I create, you revise. We can keep in contact. We'll see what we can do about meeting over the summer, perhaps. My only reason for wanting to do that is that we can meet over the summer and have the school board approve a revised plan before the start of the school year. It sounds like Heather has already shared notes with me for the meeting minutes, so
So good.
again, I will try to
Nick, I don't
Yeah.
know, if I had to chase my dogs. My dogs were just running down the road.
okay.
But
Bye.
I was gonna chime in, really quick and just say, the only week in July that is not good for me, is the week of the 17th. But besides that, I'm pretty much around. I'm just out of state. I can
Okay.
try, I'll be in Georgia, so I don't know, I mean, what,
We're going to Georgia for the meeting. That's what I heard.
yeah, I'll be in Georgia, so I could always try to Zoom, so.
All right, well, I thank everybody again for taking the time to meet tonight. And we will continue to meet and do our thing.
Thank you for setting it up.
Have a good night.
Thank you.